AMD has finally announced the Radeon RX6600 based on the Navi 23 GPUs. As a slightly cut-down version of the Navi 23 XT GPUs powering the Radeon RX6600 XT, the Radeon RX6600 promises to bring you RDNA 2's hardware-accelerated ray tracing as well as better efficiency at a lower cost, which should be enticing to a lot of people. And today we have here the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX6600, which is a pretty good example of this GPU. And without further ado, let's get into it. So let's start with the unboxing first. As you can see, the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX6600 comes in a pretty compact box, and you don't even get the image of the product on the front. What you get is mentions of PCIe 4.0 as well as the supported resolution, which is 1080p. Yes, AMD targets the Radeon RX6600 at 1080p gaming. And on the back, you also don't get any images, but you do get a bit more details about the graphics card inside, like the minimum system requirements as well as the recommended power supply. All key information that you should have before picking up one of these. And let's now get into the packaging. So on the inside, you don't really have much besides the cardboard box, which is a very simple packaging, and I don't really mind because when we buy graphics cards, we don't really consider the packaging as part of the deal. So yep. Now on the inside, you have the graphics card protected by a ESD plastic bag. And on the inside, you have the graphics card itself protected by a bubble wrap with ESD protection, as well as some basic documentation. So yeah, not much in the box, but I guess it's fine. Now that we have gotten the unboxing out of the way, let's take a closer look at the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX6600. So instead of reusing the design of the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX6600 XT, you have the same two large fans, but they are put closer together to probably improve the airflow. And the main effect of this is that you have a much shorter card that would probably fit very well in your SFF build. And while the shroud is plastic, it has some nice red accents that stand out from, your usual black plastic shrouds. I think the most beautiful part of the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX6600 is its side though. So in most PC configurations, you will have the graphics card plugged in, and then the side is what you see the most of. And I think Sapphire absolutely nails it this time because of the way that they did the design here, where you can see the Radeon logo here, as well as this closed up area with the Sapphire logo here. So this closed up area is actually not going to affect performance because of the way that the fins are running longitudinally around the card. So you can see that this area here that is open, you don't actually have any fins that allow the air to go out through the side. So this closed up design makes for a cleaner design, and I think that this looks very nice, and I really love this. And actually on the backplate as well, Sapphire did a very good job. So instead of the plastic backplates that you get with more affordable cards, this is metal, and they actually use thermal pads to help use the backplate for cooling as well, which is a very good move from them. And you can see the holes here on the back here, which allows for some air to go through directly through the card for some better cooling if you actually need more cooling with such a efficient and small GPU. And further along the back, you also have a very nice and wide open exhaust area, which will allow the air to exhaust out through the back. Obviously, this will be probably the main way that air exits the card because of the way the fins are aligned. And it looks very nice while hiding away some of the fan, while showing you just a little bit of the fin stack, while, just generally looking good. That's all I can say about it. Meanwhile, over on the other side, you also get a large opening on the PCIe bracket, and underneath you get your basic 3 display port as well as 1 HDMI port. So this is display port 1.4a with HDMI 2.1, so you can use up to your 8K monitors if you want, but obviously you won't be doing any 8K gaming on the Sapphire Radeon RX6600. Now let's take a quick look at the specifications of the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX6600. So this is based on a Navi 23 GPU manufactured on TSMC's 7nm node. And then the GPU here has 28 CUs, which translates to 1792 stream processors and 28 ray accelerators. The GPU is clocked at up to 2491 MHz, which is really quite high for such a small GPU. Along with that, you get 32 MB of Infinity Cache and 8 GB of GDDR6 clocked at up to 14 GB per second. The memory is fed through 128-bit wide memory interface, and Overall, that reduces the power consumption to about 140 watts total board power, which is really low. So the card itself features the 3 DisplayPort 1.4a as mentioned earlier, along with one HDMI 2.1 port on the back. The recommended power supply is a 500 watt one, and the interface supported is PCIe 4.0 x8, so you have to keep that in mind if you plan on using this with the PCIe 3 platform, as you only get 8 lanes. The dimensions are very small, measuring at 193mm by 120mm and 40.05mm thick. When it comes to gaming, I would say that the Radeon RX 6600 is a pretty good option if you are willing to limit yourself to 1080p. So the frame rates here are pretty good. You get above 60 frames per second in most titles, but with notable exceptions including Cyberpunk 2077 and Watch Dogs Legion, especially when ray tracing is enabled. If you want to play these two titles, I would recommend turning off ray tracing. Both games only eke out 13 FPS and 10 FPS respectively in these titles, which is quite unplayable. Most of the other games are doing quite well, and some that I left out of the chart to avoid its queuing include the Rift Breaker that runs at 125 frames per second, and also For Honor, which runs at 138 frames per second, which is a pretty good indicator of what you will get in popular esports titles. 4040p will see most games drop down below the 60 frames per second mark, but I would still consider it passable if you are willing to drop a few visual settings in exchange for higher frame rate. Ray tracing is not really a thing at this resolution, even in AMD optimized ray tracing titles like Godfall. Now Dirt 5 and Far Cry 6 might be a bit closer to the 60 frames per second mark, but dropping down a few settings will probably get you a much more comfortable playing experience. And when we get to 4K, I definitely can't recommend this graphics card for 4K gaming because as you can see here, most games don't even hit 30 frames per second. Unless you're willing to settle with some Fidelity FX Super Resolution upscaling, I really can't recommend gaming at 4K on the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX 6600. Now, I've talked quite a bit earlier about how I like the design of this card, and the two large fans being this close together makes for a very compact card with a lot of cooling. And I would say that they do a very good job at cooling the GPU underneath. So the GPU here runs at 2343 MHz on average, with the fans only spinning up to 1223 RPM, which is nigh inaudible in most cases. Hotspot temperatures are probably slightly high at 90 degrees Celsius, but this is very well within range as AMD considers hotspot temperatures of below 110 degrees Celsius to be safe. And the power draw is also very low at 100 watts according to HW Info, which does highlight the efficiency of RDNA 2. For RM2299, I would say the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX 6600 is a pretty good graphics card. It has a nice cooler, a pretty good design, and overall pretty solid build quality with a metal backplate as well. But of course, when you compare SCP versus SCP, the Radeon RX 6600 is not such a great GPU. So when it compares SCP versus SCP, you're paying $329 for the RX 6600 and $379 for the 6600 XT. In essence, you're paying 15% less, but getting 20% less performance, which is not a great deal. Obviously, this is a result of the current chip shortage, which is currently unavoidable, but yeah. If you do believe that the RX 6600 is what you want, then the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX 6600 is a pretty good example. But yeah, I don't really like the GPU, but I do like the card. And that's it for my review of the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX 6600. Hope you guys enjoyed this review of the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX 6600. If this helped you in your decision to get your next graphics card, please do let us know. And of course, make sure to let us know what you think about this graphics card and of course the current situation surrounding graphics cards in the world. So, thank you guys for watching, and if you guys enjoyed our video, please make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more content like this. I'm Vincent Chan from Poder.net, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!